Well, the Ukrainians have made the case consistently that this is a war of self-defense of their country. So there should be no distinction between defensive and offensive weaponry. And now what we're seeing under the radar happening with the Czech Republic moving tanks is a sign that there's greater comfort in moving some offensive systems towards Ukraine. The U.S. is also moving T-72s over, and Germany dragged its feet on the 100 Marder tanks that the Ukrainians asked for last week. Maybe they'll change their mind now.
So the resistance to supplying these so-called offensive weapons, including, of course, the huge spat when I was down in Poland with Mr. Blinken as well. Is it likely then, if we're seeing these more horrendous genocide accusations in areas such as Bucha and concerns that it's a similar picture in areas such as Mariupol as well, that resistance to sending MiG fighters as well, that will erode?
I think that, it's going to be a harder sell to bring MiG fighters over simply because of the concerns about Russian unpredictability, especially on the nuclear front. But there will be growing pressure, probably coming from Poland in particular, to allow those MiG-29 transfers to arrive inside Ukraine. Bulgaria has got MiGs as well, though even though they're somewhat out of service and they're purchasing F-16s. Maybe they might move eventually too, but that'll probably take longer.
Samuel, there's been a huge discussion about the relevance of NATO in recent years, but what about the UN Security Council? Because we had those calls from Zelensky yesterday for Russia to be removed. Is it possible, do you think it would send a valuable message at this point?
Well, I think it would send a very valuable and symbolic message, obviously, that Russia has been using the UN Security Council as an obstructionist. It is an aggressor, and it's on the permanent membership of a body that's aimed at guaranteeing collective security. So it is something of a paradox and a contradiction. But I think it's very unlikely that Russia is going to be expelled from the UNSC. I think it's much more likely that we could see Russia being expelled from select UN committees, in particular the UN Human Rights Council, where the United States and Britain are pushing very hard to get Russia kicked out.
Samuel, I want to ask you about the role of sanctions here and just whether you think Europe has done enough as they debate this fifth package that effectively tackles more high-end technology as well. Do you think that they have taken the tough action, given that we've heard commentary from Asian nations, for instance, that are buying up cheap oil from Russia, discounted products, saying, well, the Europeans continue to take energy from the Russians. Why shouldn't we at a discount?
Well, I think that's a fair point. I think that also there was that survey from Bloomberg, which really showed that Russia could net 1/3 more revenue from natural gas and oil this year than it did last year. So the rising prices are filling its coffers, and many Asian countries, as well as European countries, are still purchasing Russian oil and gas. So the Europeans are taking positive steps. I think German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock's comment yesterday saying first we remove coal, 4 billion euros a year, and then oil and then gas is a positive rhetorical step. And what we've seen from the Baltic states cutting off gas, in spite of their historic reliance on it, was a good step, but a lot more needs to be done.
Samuel, we're pushing you in all directions this morning, but I think you've got a wide brief. So I'll ask you this question. There's been a lot of talk about the withdrawal in the north of Russian forces and a rebuilding of positions in the south and the east. Based on your reading of the situation, do you think that we are days away now from a significant new offensive in the east and the south from these reconfigured Russian forces?
So I think that that's definitely probably a likelihood. I think that the Russians have redeployed their mission towards focusing on what they call the liberation of the Donbass and potentially down the line, the partition of eastern Ukraine, with Donetsk and Luhansk being incorporated into the Russian Federation formally, maybe alongside other smaller towns like Kherson and other areas like Kharkiv and Odessa being firmly placed on the Russian orbit. So Russia has put some more reinforcements on the Eastern Front to kind of hold the lines, including Wagner Group private military contractors, and now it's getting ready to move its northern Ukrainian forces, once they're resupplied, onto the Eastern Front.